Hello friends, so welcome to the class of B2B marketing. So today we are in the 13th lecture and we are discussing about strategic sourcing, right. So last class we had stopped at what strategic sourcing is all about and how companies are using strategic sourcing for their long term growth and financial prosperity. So let us continue with that with a few more examples. Strategic sourcing, if you see, with globalization and rapid technological innovation that is happening, has changed the entire basis of competition, right. Now, if you there was a time when we used to talk about traditional sourcing, which was nothing more than cost controlling, right. So, our whole intention was to control the cost, but slowly we have moved from that phase and we have moved into a position or a point where companies have thought cost cutting is just not enough and one can take advantage of like for example the strategies the suppliers strengths and weaknesses and adding more value in the value chain. So, by doing these kind of activities a company can really make faster growth. So, forward thinking companies are making their value chains more elastic, right, and their organizations more flexible. So, earlier when we were talking about the traditional methods, we were talking about a rigid structure and you were thinking about how to cut down the cost, maybe bring in competition among the suppliers and doing these things, right. But today we have moved from that world of thinking and we have moved towards more of a towards a place or a structure where we are trying to develop a healthy relationship within our suppliers and we are trying to bring in more innovation in them through them and also take their advantages of their infrastructure and everything. Now, vertical integration, which was a time when most of the large companies in the globe, they were following this vertical integration method, and what was happening in there, they were trying to have a control over everything. Okay. Now, for example, they wanted to control from the raw material till the last point, which was reaching the customer, right. So, forward integration, backward integration, everything was being controlled by the companies. So, they were making everything small details, they were making everything, they were trying to control themselves. But slowly with time, as strategic sourcing came into place, companies realized that vertical integration is no more a intelligent strategy and rather they can take advantage of this strategic sourcing. So, this really became a major point of discussion when the US automakers, the large big three, for example, the big three being General Motors, Ford and Chrysler, they started losing their market share to the Japanese companies, right. And after this happened, these companies understood, they thought that maybe the Japanese follow a model which is called the Kairitsu model, right, of networked suppliers. Let us try to adopt this technique and this would work for our benefit. So, the American companies, these large automakers, they started adopting this Kairitsu model of the Japanese companies. So, in this model what happens basically, the companies in Japan basically they move their design, engineering and manufacturing work to specialized partners. So, if you can understand, if you can compare now, earlier what was happening in vertical integration, we were doing everything. So, a company like Ford was manufacturing tires, was manufacturing most of the components, they were assembling the car and even they had gone to the extent of having their own rubber plantation. Okay. So, you can imagine the kind of control they were trying to have. But in this case what happened, the design, engineering and manufacturing work was allocated or given to the specialized partners. Now, by doing this what happened, the companies not only gave very important tasks to their suppliers, but they also created strong relationships to produce most of the items that was required for the automakers, right. So, items like seats, steering columns and braking systems, everything was being now being supplied by the suppliers. Okay. So, Kairitsu model actually became a very popular model. So, let me explain this Kairitsu model. So, it is a Japanese term referring to a business network made up of different companies, where each company would have a ownership of shares in the other company, right. So, this was how the model works. So, what happens here? Now, the manufacturers, supply chain partners, distributors, and sometimes there are even financiers who are involved in this process. So, as you can see this model that is given here. So, there are several companies who are connected to each other, and there is also a bank who is connected. So, as a financier. Okay. Now, Kairetus they work together and have close relationships, and sometimes they take small equity stakes in each other, as I was just saying. So, all the while remaining operationally independent. So, they are independent, but they try to take stake in each other. So, this is even in India you can find many companies, for example, the Tatas, the Shapurji Palunji, the Mistris, right. So, Tatas have even the Vadiyas, they are some or the other way involved and they have taken stake in each other, and if not a perfect way of Kairetsu, but you can visualize it as a Kairetsu model, right. So, they help each other and they try to build in a partnership kind of a situation, because if I have taken a stake in your company and if that company does not work then or does not do well, then automatically as an investor I would lose my money. So, that is why everybody wishes the good of others, right. So, it is kind of a win-win situation. So, to ensure the long term success of a partner, both parties, whoever the parties are, let us say the buyer and the supplier, they have to open their books, share detailed information that became the basis of continual quality and cost improvement over many years. So, earlier days what was happening, companies were working as independent units and they were not sharing, they were trying to have lot of information which is they were thinking it is confidential and you would not share it. But they realize that if you try to hide your information, it is not adding much value. So, it is better that companies should share their information with each other, and that way they can take advantage. Okay. Chrysler established what it called a value managed relationship, and in which it consolidated component purchases with few suppliers. It believed that could sustain competitive cost, high quality and efficient delivery. And the result was that Chrysler, which was at one point before Lee Iacocca took over the reins of Chrysler, it was almost coming to a bankruptcy, right. It was moving towards a bankruptcy, but by being more efficient and using this value managed relationships, Chrysler became one of the most profitable and successful enterprises in the world. Okay. So, strategic sourcing helps us to move from the traditional cost based approach to an approach which is more flexible, it is more flexible, right. And here the company looks at higher value to attain higher value with lower risk, with low risk, right. So, this is what the company wants to adopt. Now, this has become a very important strategy nowadays, and all B2B manufacturers, they are trying to use this strategic sourcing for their betterment, for their growth. Now, as I discussed, we had discussed in the last lecture. So, there are few steps in strategic sourcing, as you can see. For example, the first one, it starts with conducting an internal need analysis. Now what is the need the companies have? Now, for example, what kind of materials, right, services, processes, right, they need, and how much do they have and what kind of requirement is there, how much, and with new techniques like for example material requirement planning, right. So, MRP 1 and MRP 2, right, which is manufacturer resource planning also it is said. So, what has happened, things have become more streamlined and companies have become more efficient in their approach. Okay. The entire thought process has changed. Okay. Now, here we are taking much advantage of building a better relationship with our suppliers. So, obviously, when you are talking about strategic sourcing, you need to understand what kind of suppliers are available and you have to make an assessment of them, right. In the third phase, companies largely use this Kraljic model and they try to divide the products or services into different quadrants with, like for example, as we had discussed, leverage products, strategic products, bottleneck products and not so critical products, right. Then supply relationship is built, and maybe here in this phase companies would like to even invest, right, make investment in their companies, in their suppliers, invest in suppliers and try to build their suppliers. For example, Tata Steel helps its supplier to develop, then tries to take benefit in the sense tries to take that advantage, right. So, if I invest in my supplier with let us say latest state of the art technology, best machinery, so automatically the supplier would be in a position to produce in a cheaper cost, in a better way, a better quality product. So, this product actually finally comes back to me, and what is my gain as a, why Tatas could have done it, but why did not they do it? Tatas did not do it because they thought ki if we are getting these things done from our suppliers, we can focus on our core abilities, focus on the core abilities. So, which is actually very true, that you can now focus on some important work in which you are more concerned. Okay. The next thing in the strategic sourcing is to assess the risk in the market. So, risk could be anything, a political risk, a pandemic kind of a risk, a supply chain risk, a quality a technology change risk. So, many things can happen, right. So, for example, recently you did not have chips were not available, right, chips unavailability. So, unavailability of chips which hampered the car production, the auto production, right. The next thing is negotiate and finally select the supplier and try to make a continuous improvement. So, this continuous improvement again, for example, you think about how companies can make a continuous improvement, right. So, every process or every step in the value chain, how you can add something to that, right. Let us talk about this a case, right, in which what has happened. So, this case would be kind of a understanding about the last few things that we have studied. So, this is about a large public university with more than 20 locations throughout a major city and currently has nearly 100 different computer and software systems to manage functions. Now, what are the functions it has to manage? Now, student registration, billing and collections, purchasing, human resource management and payroll. Some of the systems run on generally legacy mainframe computers, while others can be accessed on personal computers, right, throughout the university. The university has appointed, let us say, a new chancellor, right, Dr. Brinda Ghosh, and she believes this is an area where huge savings might be realized. Okay. So, as you can see, there is wherever you are studying, so in a university, the university has to make lot of purchases, right. So, the vice chancellor of the university takes a call to cut down the cost. So, here also the same thing is happening. So, while she is not a computer expert, but she has read extensively about the ERP systems and found a definition online which says that enterprise resource planning system integrates internal and external management information across the entire organization. Okay. The major ERP components include a central database that stores and manages the key information of the institution. It should also include report generators and analytical tools. Okay. From a discussion with other administrations in the organization, it seems like the new system might cost almost 50 crores. Therefore, she feels that it will be important to involve all the people who might play a vital role in the decision making. During the past 3 years, local and national governments have been continuously cutting back on their expenditure for education, and tax revenues have been lower, and its legislatures have been less willing to appropriate funds to raise tax rates. So, because of this, the university also depends on the government fund and all. So, now that has become a problem. So, just recently the press has been reporting that some students who are not citizens are attending classes and realizing the benefits that normally goes to those who live in the city. So, this has focused more attention on university policies and procedures, because people who are not enrolled, they are also attending your classes. Because the university is a public institution, it has established strict ethical rules. No employee is permitted to receive anything of value from a potential supplier. So, now this is the case, right, where this university has to take a call now. Since the university is a very large organization with more than 22 lakh students, Dr. Vrinda Ghosh now also has a significant staff to help her. This includes a large management information systems department who would probably take the lead in the kind of change that she is thinking. And implementing a new ERP will require major change throughout the entire institution. The university has many component divisions, including each individual college and cross college discipline committees. So, naturally the computer science department in each college would want to have a say in the decision. And a simple organizational chart is also given to you, so that you can look at it. This is a university, since this is a university organization, it is important to know that the faculty enjoy a high level of independence from both the individual and college presidents and the chancellor of the entire university. Dr. Ghosh has found from a reading that acquiring a new ERP is extremely complex. What is she saying? It is a very complex process. Especially important is the formation of a acquisition team, that is a purchasing team basically. And according to we have seen from the past that the team should be multidisciplinary, obviously, as a buying center. The head of this team may be chosen from inside or outside the organization and must be a strong leader. A steering committee consists of senior level individuals who should be selected from the acquisition team, and two major firms now who are providing this ERP support systems have shown interest. One is Oracle and the other is SAP. Okay. Now, assume that you are the director of marketing for, let us say, SAP. How would you pitch your case in front of the vice chancellor, right? The university will not make a very large initial purchase, but continue an ongoing relationship with for the foreseeable future. So, this is the case. Now, in such a condition, here you can see that as the university would require a lot of software and hardware components, and this process will go on for a long period of time, but funding is very slow. So, in such a condition, how would the vice chancellor approach to the following questions? The first question says, how will the political environment affect the purchasing process? Okay. So, just take a pause and think, because there is a change in the political climate, how would that affect the purchasing process of the university? Who might be included in the DMU? The DMU here is like the buying center. Okay. So, who should be included? Who would be the influencer, decider, buyer, gatekeeper and user in the DMU? And briefly describe how the environmental influences might come into play in the university buying decision. And finally, how might the DMU go about evaluating your firm as a potential supplier? So, you are SAP, and from SAP's point of view, you have to answer this question, right. So, take a pause, think about the answers and you can share it with us later on. Okay. Now, what answers I have thought for these individual questions? So, I have made a tentative answer. So, for the first question, how will the political environment affect the purchasing process? Now, for example, you see, we all know that tariff affects the purchasing process, right. So, for example, as 18% tax on business process outsourcing services has been levied in India. Now, if a university comes under notification number 45/2117, right, central tax and notification number 472017, so integrated tax rate. So, the concession is 5%. So, in which tax bracket, now for example, you are coming and how much you have to pay, that extra amount or the tax rate, that puts a very important, that has a significant impact on your decision making, right. Similarly, the custom duty concession under DSIR YTU VRG CDE 1115 2018, right, if it is registered. So, I have written it. So, here, so are you going to avail any duty concession or not? So, accordingly these kind of whatever decisions are generally taken, they are taken by looking at the kind of involvement, the kind of political climate, the kind of decisions being taken by the government, and that has a significant impact. Okay. So, who might be included in the decision making unit now? So, obviously the university vice chancellor Dr. Ghosh, right, along with the members in the committee shown in the organizational chart, will all be the members of the decision making unit. So, this is the organizational chart. So, where you have the MIS staff, the individual college presidents, faculty department heads, and computer science discipline committee. So, these are the people who are obviously more relevant. So, they will be a part of the committee. Who would be the influencers, deciders, buyers, gatekeepers and users in the DMU? So, obviously what I understand is decider would be Dr. Ghosh, buyer would be the university, right. So, maybe the secretary or the registrar, influencer would be computer science department heads, user would be the student lot and the employees of the university who are going to utilize these softwares, and gatekeeper would be the buying team as a whole or the IT team which is providing the support, right. So, the IT team will be helpful because it has a lot of knowledge about the past purchase decisions and all. So, what kind of decisions have been taken in the past for other, maybe not directly this product, but some other related products, that would be of great help. And accordingly there could be the secretaries or somebody who is generally managing the information, right. Okay. Now, briefly describe how the environmental influences might come into play in the university buying decision. For example, let us talk about the economic environment in terms of purchasing power, inflation and cost. Now, this is very important because whenever you talk about any purchase, you look at the purchasing power of the people, because for example, this is a public university, but still when you talk about anything, when you want to buy something, right. So, you need to look at whether people will be ready to pay, because obviously whenever you buy something, that cost passes on to the customers, right. So, will I be able to get back the cost what I am incurring, right. So, maybe in this case it is not very strong because it is a funded university, public funded university, right. So, is there any political influence? No, yes, political influence is obviously there, which we have already discussed in the first question, but still we can say that it is a funded university, and the government is not ready to increase the tax rate and all. So, there could be issues which can hamper, right, which can affect the buying decision, right. Technological in terms of updating of software and systems, that also can briefly play a role. Will there be any legal influence? Legal influence might be there in terms of following the law of land, because when you are selecting a, let us say, supplier, let us say whoever it is, SAP, Oracle or any XYZ, right, you have to follow certain standards. For example, nowadays government has started e-procurement process, which has become very, very helpful and very useful, right, in the sense that there is a standard process and you have to follow that, and if you do not follow, for example, you have to get quotations from different vendors, and then you have to select one vendor out of it. So, this is general process that we follow on basis of maybe cost and something. Now, if you do not follow it, then there will be a legal impact. Okay. The last thing is social impact or social influence, which is in terms of the way the layout or structure of ERP is presented. So, these are some of the influences: social influence, legal influence, technological influence, political and economic influence, right. How might the DMU go about evaluating your firm as a potential supplier? So, to answer this, what I thought is, in terms of present clients and previously done work, in terms of the cost and price charged for the product, right. So, they can compare, right, against the competitors or some other markets, how it is happening, and in terms of the service and maintenance offered by the company. So, which is a better supplier, maybe SAP, Oracle or whatever companies you are talking about. So, these would some of the basis will be the basis of which on which you will take a decision, right, whether to select one vendor or the other. Now, coming to E-procurement. Now, when you are talking about strategic sourcing and we have understood so much about strategic sourcing. So, one thing that has tremendously helped in strategic sourcing is e-procurement. Now, e-procurement is a technology based approach that automates purchase or procurement, right, and it has helped in online negotiations, collaborative tools, it has analytical tools and knowledge management softwares and all. So, e-procurement has completely changed the way things are being done nowadays. As I said, even the government of India has started purchasing or procurement through online procurement, and you have to follow a simple mechanism and everything is very streamlined in that. Okay. So, now I think you have got a some kind of an idea and understanding how we can deal with such kind of real life situations, right. So, when you are going for some kind of a purchase, so companies or maybe you are a university or an institution or anything who makes a lot of purchases in a year. So, one can think of strategic sourcing as a method and adopt it for their benefit, right. So, I think what I have tried to explain, you must be clear with it and understood that it is very important and very useful for your day to day activities in when you are working somewhere. So, with this I would like to wind up this lecture and we will meet in the next lecture, right. So, have a great time. Thank you very much.